Hey everybody, wanted to do another video this week about some of my wishes for Blackmagic Design. In my last video I talked about new products that I'd like to see. In this video I'm going to talk more about things that I would like to see added to existing products, or maybe even just updates to existing products. Some of these things might require some additional hardware that doesn't already exist, but Blackmagic has been known for adding new capabilities to products through firmware updates quite a bit in the past. They've done that quite a few times, and so maybe some of these things could actually happen. So first of all, I have no inside information about any of this stuff. This is all just me and my wish list for things that I would like to see, not necessarily just for me, but for other members of the video production community as well. I think of being a YouTuber here and hearing voices from a lot of different people through either comments on my YouTube channel or over on Discord or email from people that I get regularly. I get a lot of feedback about what people are looking for in products, and a lot of people are like, hey, does this do this or whatever, and that gets, a lot of times that gets me thinking, hey, that's kind of a good idea, or let's take that another direction and maybe think that we can accomplish what you're asking for in another different way. So the things that I'm coming up with here are some of my own ideas, and some of them are coming from ideas of people that I have heard from in various means because I have this YouTube channel. So this video is going to be a little bit lengthy, but I'm going to try and go through these things as quickly as I can without getting too incredibly detailed. So that said, let's just dive in. Okay. All right. So first of all, let's talk about ATEM switchers. These are the products that Blackmagic is probably best known for, particularly the ATEM Mini. These products are great, but there's some shortcomings that they have that could, in some cases, be very easily addressed. So let's talk about these things very quickly. So first of all, higher quality recording for the program output. So right now, when you go to live stream from an ATEM Mini or ATEM Extreme or even Television Studio HD8, the program recording is at the same bit rate as you happen to be streaming, which probably means that it's lower than what you would hope to have from a master high quality recording, which therefore means if you want a high quality recording, you're hooking up another external device, a recorder of some kind, probably a hyperdeck, in order to record that signal. How nice would it be if we were able to get a really high quality recording on device or through USB instead of having the degraded copy that we're currently getting? So right now you're on your ISO models of switcher, you're getting a higher quality signal on your individual inputs than you do on your program output. And I think it's probably time that we actually change that. Okay. Now, speaking of recording, that's the second thing on my list. The ability to record the super source on ISO models that feature both of those features. So that would include the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, ATEM SDI Extreme ISO, and the Television Studio HD8. Right now, the super source is not recorded separately, and so if you're using that super source, the only recording you'll have of that will be on the program feed. So it'd be really nice to have that as an isolated feature. All right, third one. It would be really nice to be able to select any image from the media pool. So these switchers hold between 20 and 32 different images in the media pool. Use any of those as a video source without having to go to one of the media players. So juggling the different sources going to the media players can be a bit of a juggling act. Especially when you start using these things for lower thirds and for animated transitions and things like that, it becomes kind of a nightmare dealing with that, especially because they only have 2 media players. So if we were to have the ability to take any of those images from the media pool and send those directly to upstream keyer, downstream keyer, one of your transitions, whatever, that would be pretty amazing. And I don't think there's any technical reason why they wouldn't be able to do that. Next thing I'd love to see on the ATEM switchers would be routable inputs. So in this case, I could say camera is connected on input 5, and I want to route that to input 1 on the buttons. That'd be very handy to have that, because that allows you to have sources that you use less commonly, or if you're, say for example, you've got one switcher that's used for 2 different situations. In some places you have cameras over here and you have cameras over here, and you alternate back and forth. Being able to reroute those inputs would be very handy, so that input 1 could either come from input 1 over here, or it can come from input 5 over here. That would be amazing to have that. All right, next one. This is kind of a pie in the sky wish, but I would love to have Dante audio support on ATEM switchers. Blackmagic has gone with MADI on their 4ME Constellation models and the new Television Studio HD8. The problem with MADI is it's a point-to-point, and we really do need point-to-multi-point audio capability. So I know there are ways to convert MADI to Dante and vice versa, but that's an extra investment that needs to be made, and it's not cheap. Actually having Dante support built into the switchers would be awesome, and I would be happy to pay a little extra in order to have that capability. I use Dante very heavily, and it's absolutely changed the way that I handle audio with my productions. And right now, without having Dante in my switcher, I have to do some really awkward things in order to get audio in and out. So Dante support would be awesome. Now, next one. This is one that's I'm asking on behalf of software developers all over. So most of Blackmagic's products have a very simple TCP-based protocol that you use for communicating with them. The ATEM is an exception. It uses a UDP-based protocol that Blackmagic has kept close to the chest. They've never revealed how it works. They don't document it. And so anybody who wants to talk to the ATEM switcher without using Blackmagic software, which by the way is ancient, it hasn't really been updated, they have to reverse engineer the protocol, and that's how Companion works, that's how Mix Effect works, that's how a lot of these other third-party software applications actually do behave. One big exception to that is Central Control. It does go through the official Blackmagic SDK, so props to Central Control for doing that. But it would be really nice if there was a simple TCP-based protocol for ATEM switchers, so that developers who want to control these devices can do so without having to use these third-party libraries, which can often cause switchers to malfunction. It'd be really nice if we had an official way that was not quite as antiquated as the existing SDK. All right. Okay, next one, and there's a workaround for this one. That's the ability to run multiple instances of the ATEM software control on a single computer. Why would anybody want to do that? Well, if you got two switchers, for one, you have to, and you want to do control two of them side by side. Right now, there's no official way to do that. But the other one is if you wanted to have multiple tabs from the software open at once. So if you wanted to have one monitor on a computer where you're controlling the cameras and another monitor where you're controlling the audio, being able to run two copies of the software would be awesome in order to make that happen. So again, there's ways of handling that. I've got a video here on my channel about that, so if you're curious, you can go back and look at that. But making that something that's officially supported would be awesome. All right, next one, the ability to route multi-views to the different outputs on Constellation switchers. So right now, the multi-view outputs on the Constellation model as a switcher are just multi-views, and then all the other outputs will output all the other signals into the switcher except multi-view, which is a little awkward if you wanted to, like for example, have an output going directly to a monitor and you want to be able to switch between multi-view and another source. Can't do it right now. The workaround for that is to take the multi-view outputs, route them back into inputs on the switcher, but that adds delay. It's not an ideal way to pull that off. So being able to include the multi-view as one of those routable sources in the Constellation switchers would be amazing. All right, next one. I'm trying to go through these fast. Next one would be LUT processing on switcher inputs and outputs. So adding a LUT to give a specific look to your video is something that's very modern, very cool, can really up your game quite a bit. And Blackmagic actually has devices which are capable of adding LUTs to a video source. So they're the micro converter, bidirectional converter 12G will do a 33-point LUT, and the 3D version will do a 17-point LUT. Their SDI to HDMI 6G will also do this, as will their Terran X Mini version of their SDI to HDMI as well. So they've already got the hardware out there to do this, and even though LUTs seem like they might be complicated to implement in piece of hardware, they're actually pretty simple. It is a lookup table. That's what LUT stands for. And so the math to actually put that, apply that to a video signal is really not that complicated. So that's something that they could probably do if they really wanted to. That would be amazing, especially if you're dealing with cameras from different manufacturers or even different families from different manufacturers. And I'm even looking at Blackmagic with their different lines of cameras having different looks to them. Having the ability to have a LUT be applied in the switcher would be pretty amazing. Okay, next one, super source layout presets with animations. So we have the ability to do super sources with a lot of the switchers now for ATEM Mini Extreme on up, and the Blackmagic has 4 different presets in the ATEM software control, but they're not really usable, and there's no sort of animation or anything like that, and you can't program your own. So the ability to create your own super source layouts, save them in the ATEM, and be able to later recall them either as a simple cut or as an animated transition, that would be pretty awesome. There's a lot of solutions, software solutions that allow you to do this, but there's nothing based on hardware. So like for example, using my control surface that I've got back here, the 2ME advanced panel, there's no way for me to trigger that kind of thing from there. So having official support from Blackmagic for that would be pretty awesome. So second to last on ATEM switchers is going to be the ability to do video playback from within the ATEM switcher itself. This is particularly interesting now because with the Television Studio HD8, we know that they are capable of putting MPEG-4 decoders on all of the input channels. They're doing that for the live streaming capability. Why not extend that a little bit and be able to play back from a video file that's on either the internal storage or a connected USB device? In the case of that model, the hardware is already there. In other models, it wouldn't be that difficult to add. However, if we're going to do this, I would love for it to be able to support transparency. So ProRes 4444 with alpha, that'd be awesome. So in order to handle those partially transparent graphics that we very often want to deal with in the video production world. So having the ability to do video playback on the switchers that include the ISO capability and higher end models would be just awesome. Next one, HDR support. And I know that this is something that's available in the 8K Pro, and allegedly the older models supported it as well, but I've never seen it actually officially demonstrated. And that's the ability just to support high dynamic range cameras. So you can certainly run the signals through the switchers, but there's no, as far as I know, no way to flag that output as being an HDR. So therefore you can't stream it properly, you can't record it properly. If you want to do HDR switching in one of these Blackmagic switchers, ATEM switchers, you have to record it as if it's not HDR and then run it through a video editing application in order to tag it as HDR. So it'd be nice if the switchers were able to support that. And this is a freebie. This is super easy to do. All it really is a flag on the video, and then a lookup table when you're doing transparency, animated, or dissolve transitions, etc., to make sure that those levels are being calculated properly. So it's actually not that complicated to do. I'm sure that they could do it with a simple software upgrade. All right, next one, and this would be the last one on ATEM switchers, and that would be region of interest support on 4K switchers. So what region of interest is, it allows you to take a 4K image, doesn't have to be 4K, but that's typically the way it's done, and be able to zoom into certain portions of it and treat those small windows as if they are their own video sources. So if you're shooting an interview situation, you got two people there, you start with one wide camera, and then you can set up two virtual sources, one on each person that's that's involved in the interview, and those get treated as their own separate sources. So then you can cut between those or whatever as if they are dedicated cameras, but in reality they're just a smaller rectangular region from a wider video source. That would be pretty awesome to see that in ATEM switchers. All right, moving on to the mini and micro converters. So there's one very obvious thing that Blackmagic's never done, and it kind of amazes me. So that would be configuration of these devices using Bluetooth. So right now, in order to configure them, we have to do one of two things. Either plug them into a computer and use USB to configure it that way, or on case of the mini converters or Terranex Mini, use dip switches on the front or on the side of the device in order to change the configuration. Why not Bluetooth? That would make everything so much easier. And I think a lot of people don't bother to change the configuration on these devices because it's been so cumbersome to do so. So if we had a Blackmagic app for iPhones and Android that communicates with converters over Bluetooth, that would be just awesome. That would be amazing. The other thing that I'd like to see with the Mini and Terranex converters would be just a simple LUT box. Now, as mentioned earlier, we can already do this using a few of the different devices that they have, but a dedicated box that's just there for LUTs and nothing else, that would be pretty cool. It's SDI input, SDI output, apply a LUT, and nothing else. That would be great. It'd be even nicer to see that be done in a unit that can handle 4 cameras at once. So, I don't know. Pretty cool idea, I think. Okay, video hubs. Now, these products are actually pretty good as they are, so I didn't have much by the way of ideas on ways that they could be improved. However, there are two small ones that I would actually love to see. First one is the ability to preview any video source without going through the process of routing. So right now, you can't just hit the source button and scroll in order to see what the different sources are doing. You have to hit the destination button first, which it does work and allows you to see what's going on, but it has the downside of, well, what if you accidentally hit the take button? You're probably routing a source that you don't mean to. Or if you got your router configured where it automatically routes and doesn't require you to press the take button, all of a sudden you are rerouting to one of your outputs. And so that's not necessarily a great thing. I would love to have the ability to say, just hit the source button, scroll through it, and let you see on the screen what that particular source is doing. Just a small little refinement that would make using the device a little bit nicer. The other one that I would like to see on the Video Hub is the ability to save and recall presets. So I've got my route for my 40 inputs already set up the way that I like. I need to save that and then later recall it. I'd love the ability to do that. Like press a button or go into the menu and say save to preset 1. It doesn't have to necessarily have a name from the user interface on the device itself, but the ability to memorize and later recall your current routing would be pretty amazing. I do a lot of events on repeat, and it would be really nice to be able to reroute the sources every time I go to do those events automatically, instead of having to go through and set each one of those things up manually every single time. So a great feature addition that would be very easy for Blackmagic to implement. Okay, the HyperDeck products. These are video recorders that Blackmagic has had for a number of years. Some of these can be done in software, but others are going to require new hardware. The first one on my list does require new hardware, but it's one that I desperately need, and I know that a lot of other people do as well. And that is dedicated hardware, audio inputs and outputs on the devices. So just to give you an example, very often when I'm doing video production, I have pre-recorded video segments that I need to play back as part of the presentation. I use HyperDecks to do that, but getting audio from the HyperDeck over into my audio mixer has been a pain. So what I've actually done is I've taken an old SDI to HDMI converter, which has the mini converter, which has audio outputs on it. I've got that hooked into the monitor output on one of my HyperDecks, so that I actually have a way to get audio out of it, because otherwise there is no way to do that. I know Blackmagic is really trying to steer us in the direction of doing audio directly on the ATEMs themselves, but there's just too many limitations for a lot of us, and a lot of audio guys are probably never going to embrace that, so they're going to want to do their own separate mixer, and so having the ability to get audio out of a HyperDeck is actually pretty important. Likewise, being able to get audio into HyperDeck is certainly very important as well. Like, what if someone is doing multiple languages? You need a way to be able to record those additional languages onto your recordings as well. So something that I would love to see, I know a lot of other people would like to see, is HyperDecks which have audio inputs and outputs. So hope you're listening, Blackmagic. This one's pretty important. All right, the next thing that I want to bring up with HyperDecks is I would love to see just a software enhancement that makes it easier to select between your different medium that you have, or media that you actually have connected. So, some of these models support multiple SD cards as well as USB, and some of them have SSDs as well. Juggling between those right now is really awkward, and it wouldn't take much for Blackmagic to clean that up in software. In fact, sometimes you can't easily switch between those. If you're just doing playback and you've got multiple cards installed and it's currently set to play from one, there's nothing you can do to make it play on two other than eject one temporarily. So Blackmagic really needs to clean this up, make this a little bit easier to select between the different media that we've got. And that is especially awkward when you have more than two connected. So like the HyperDeck Studio Pro 4K and HD, those can have two SSDs, that can have two SD cards, and have USB connected all at the same time. And with USB, you can even have multiple drives connected. And trying to select between those different media is kind of a nightmare, if I'm being honest. So I'd love to see that just be handled a little bit in a little bit easier fashion, a little bit more intuitive, a little easier for people to do. The next thing I'd love to see on the HyperDeck is an easy way to break recordings up into multiple files. So very often I'm shooting events where, like, for example, it's a business conference and they have multiple different speakers, and I'd love to have those be individual files so that it's very easy for me to copy those off and give those to the client right away. Particularly when you have a long day, we're recording for 4 hours at a time, 4 or 5 hours at a time. Being able to break that up into multiple files would be great. Right now, the only way to do it is, well, it's two ways to do it. You can either stop and start recording again, or you press and hold the record button to go from one card to another. That works, but it's awkward, and trying to keep track of all of that at the end of the day is kind of a bit of a nightmare. So if we're able to record, for example, the one USB disk for an entire day, just tap the record button to separate the different segments into the individual files. That would be amazing. That's actually just a small software tweak, so I'd love to see that happen. Another thing that I'd love to see on the HyperDeck is a tally indicator. So right now there is no indicator of when a playback device is actually live. It would be really easy for Blackmagic, I think, to be able to add just a red border around the outside of the video indicating when that particular source is live. You'd have to be able to tell it which input it's connected to. That wouldn't be hard to do, and in fact the ATEM actually already knows that. So it would be very easy for the ATEM to say, hey, you're currently on air, display your tally box. So I'd love to see that as a small enhancement on the HyperDecks. That would be very handy. One thing that I've heard from a lot of people, and I don't know if this one's actually technically possible or not with existing hardware, but the ability to play back and record simultaneously would be great. You can use that as a tape delay, for example. I know a lot of other people would like to see that for instant replay capabilities. I don't know that the HyperDecks are technically capable of handling that, but it'd be really cool if that was a feature that those products actually had. So simultaneous playback and recording would be awesome, and something that I know a lot of people would like to see. Another thing that would be great on future models of HyperDeck would be a USB-C port on the front. So I think all of the current HyperDeck Studio models will allow you to record to a connected USB-C device, but they require you to plug in on the back. For those of us who have our equipment rack mounted, that's not exactly easy to get to. I've been able to get around that on my fly pack by extending that out to a rear panel, but it'd be great if that was just part of the front panel and just plug right in and hit record and you're good to go. That'd be pretty great. Moving on to a new rack mount monitor product. So currently Blackmagic has a Smart View Duo, Smart Scope Duo products. They're dual monitors in a rack mount. This thing is getting very dated, and I mentioned in a previous video that I'd love to see this updated based on the video assist technology that's out there. So this would allow us to have higher resolution. It would give us a touchscreen interface. It also give us the ability to have our scopes be overlaid on top of video, so you don't have to select between those to be able to view both of them simultaneously. Give us a false color option. It'll be really cool to also have a timecode display. That's something we currently don't have on those products. And it'd be very awesome to have an input selection too. So currently they have 2 inputs, but input 1 always goes to the monitor on the left. Input 2 always goes to the monitor on the right. It'd be nice to be able to duplicate it so both of them show input 1, so you can have video and one of the scopes side by side, or be able to view input 2 on both of the monitors as well. So fairly easy things to do if they were to come out with a new product that's based on the video assist line. I'd love to see that, and I think a lot of other people would as well. Moving on to the Blackmagic professional camera. So this includes things like the studio camera, the Ursas, the Pocket Cinema cameras, whatever. I think there's only one thing that I'm going to bring up here. There's a number of things that I would love to see, but I think I'm only going to mention one, and that is consistent color from one model to another. So right now, if you mix and match between different models of camera from Blackmagic Design, and you cut between them, they have different colors. They look different. So one might be more green than the other. One might be more red or magenta than another. This is kind of a real problem for anybody who, for example, has a bunch of studio cameras, but they need to throw in a roving camera that somebody wears on their shoulder and walks around with. Right now, it's difficult to get those colors to match. Blackmagic should be expert in colors. They've got DaVinci Resolve. They've got color correctors in all of their cameras. It should be pretty easy for them to fix in software, but so far they haven't. And their cameras can have a wildly different look from one model to the next. And so I'd love to see this fixed, makes their products that much more viable for live production, like the people who watch this channel tend to do. So Blackmagic, please figure out a way to get your colors consistent across your cameras. That would be a huge boon for those of us who are doing live work. And then the last one I'm going to bring up is the web presenters. So those of us who have tried to use the web presenters to do streaming, a lot of us have run into problems with them. In fact, to the point I can't even trust my units at all. Their network stack, and I've done a lot of research into this. I've spent hours troubleshooting and done network captures. I've had network professionals analyze it, and we've come to a conclusion that the product is fundamentally flawed. So what happens is it overreacts to any sort of packet loss that happens in the network. And this is particularly a problem with Google and YouTube. For some reason, once the traffic gets into the Google network, some of the packets get dropped. And the web presenter, when it sees that, sort of freaks out and cuts its bit rate way down. So I know this has happened to quite a few different people out there. It isn't just me. But if you're trying to stream to YouTube using the web presenter at high bit rate, there's a very high likelihood that at some point your device is going to go into a mode where it just basically stops sending data. Your cache fills up, the live stream freezes, and people are not able to watch. It's a software issue that can be very easily fixed. I'd love for them to take care of that, make that product actually useful again for those of us who are trying to stream to YouTube. So hopefully Blackmagic will finally listen and get this corrected. It's been something that people have been complaining about for years because it also affects the ATEM minis too. It'd be great if they get that resolved, and so we'd actually be able to stream with reliability on the web presenter and ATEM mini products. And while I'm mentioning the web presenter, I'd also like to see a new version of that product which actually supports SRT and maybe even H.265. So we're seeing more and more services that support SRT and or H.265, and who knows, maybe even AV1? Who knows, maybe. So it'd be nice to see some of the newer protocols and capabilities added to those as well. So I think the future is there. I think Blackmagic would be in a great position moving forward if they were to add those protocols to an updated web presenter HD and 4K product for those of us who want to be able to take advantage of higher reliability, lower latency streaming with higher quality video. That would be just fantastic. All right, so there we go. That's my list of updates that I would love to see on Blackmagic products. This is not everything, but I kind of narrowed it down, some of the most important. And I'd like to hear what you have to say as well. So did I nail it with my list here, or are there other things that I've missed out on? Please let me know in the comments down below. Did I miss the mark entirely? Some of these things, are they just not that useful? Please let me know your thoughts and share those with us, the rest of the community. You can do that in the comment section down below, or you can also join us over on my Discord server. It's totally free to join. It's a great community with a bunch of other people who work in video production who are very helpful, eager to answer questions and help out. So anyway, that's going to do it for right now. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a fantastic day.